Hi there guys, got a video here for you today on gauges. In my previous Maverick video you will have noticed that I've fitted new gauges to the rifle. What I did was replace the standard small faced FX ones with some digital ones. Now what I thought we'd do today is I'd test them for accuracy and just do a quick review on them. So what we've got here is a test block that I've made. We have a test body here which the gauges screw into and are sealed with a small O-ring on the bottom of the threads. Next we have a Foster fitting on this side to attach to the bottle, and on this side we have a caliber gauge. Now the caliber gauge is Swiss made and guaranteed accurate, so we'll be using it as the master in this situation. What we'll be doing is we'll be pressurising up the block and then reading each of the gauges to see what they read, and then comparing that to the caliber master. Okay, so I've pressurised it all up and we can see the readings here. We're at about 139.5 on the master, and as you can see here, these are the readings on each of the gauges. So they're not identical, but they're all within 1 bar of the caliber gauge. What I've done here is just put a standard FX white face gauge on so you can see the comparison. Now this is a known bad gauge, and as you can see here it's only reading 100. So it's well over 39 bar out, but the Chinese digital ones seem to be almost right on the money. Okay, so that's about it for accuracy. I've tested these gauges across a nice wide pressure setting between about 100 bar and 200 bar, and they seem to work fine at any pressure. There's a small amount of deviation between them, but I believe they're perfectly good for airgun use. They're not going to tell you the pressure down to the last 0.1 of a bar, but they are very, very close to the master. And they're certainly going to be more accurate than an analog gauge. All of the gauges that I've tested, I bought 5. 3 of them are here and 2 of them are on my Maverick. Across all of them, maximum deviation from the master pressure gauge, in this case the caliber, was 1 bar. Which I think for something that costs less than 1/10 of the price of a caliber gauge is well accurate enough. Right, so I'll take one out of the test jig here and then I'll get you a good close-up. Okay, so here's a nice close-up. As you can see, a nice black face with a little on-off button on the bottom. Now to turn the gauge on, you have to push the on-off button twice. This will bring up the pressure in bar and the battery down the bottom here. Now it has about a 30-second stay on time, so after 30 seconds it will auto shut off, but if you want to turn it off manually you can just hold down the power button and it will turn off. Has the battery in the side. As you can see here, there's a hole to push it out of on the other side, so the battery comes out nice and easily. You don't have to take the face off, it can be just changed while the gauge is in situ. The threads on the bottom here are 1/8 BSP, which is a standard fitting for most airgun gauges. They do have 2 options, an MPT and a BSP. The BSP is the standard choice for airgun gauges, and as a little extra bonus it does come with a nice black cover. Slide that over there, the gauge is nice and covered up and black. So the body diameter excluding the cover is 28mm. With the cover installed it's 30. This is quite a bit larger than the standard FX chrome gauges, as you can see here, but the diameter is the same as a wiki gauge. This is one I've got fitted on the Edgun Leshy 2, and it's the same diameter as the digital one. However, the body depth is much greater on the digital gauge. The wiki gauge has a body length of 18.5mm. However, the digital gauge has a body length of 23.5. So just be aware of that. If you buy one of these gauges, it's going to stick out a little more than a wiki gauge would. Speaking of the Leshy 2, the digital gauge does fit, but it does stick out a little bit from the body. As you can see there, there's a bit of brass showing, and it's a bit too deep to be recessed in the butt of the gun nicely, which is a bit of a shame, but there you go. I might see if I can turn a bit off the back of the gauge and get it to fit a bit better. However, it does fit in the butt of the gun quite nicely. It's the right diameter, it's just a bit too long. Okay, that's about it for the features of the gauge. I just thought I'd tell you a little bit of what I like about it and a little bit of what I don't. So for the money, it's a fantastic bit of kit, and the ability to see the low resolution, i.e. 1 bar of difference, is really quite handy. Also, the side mounted battery is also a really nice touch. The ability to push that out and you don't have to take out the face cover or anything like that. That's a total plus in my opinion. Okay, so my only complaint is the on-off feature. What I mean by this is that you have to push the on-off button twice to turn the gauge on. Like so. If you just push the on button once, you get these 4 lines. I'd much rather you just push the button once and it come onto the pressure setting. The other thing that I'm not so keen about is the on time. The gauge stays on for about 30 seconds and then switches itself off, which is fine for just looking at your pressure, but if you're adjusting your regulator, it always seems to cut out at the worst time. So I'd like to see this either adjustable or an always on mode. But that being said, they're only minor complaints and don't detract from the overall working or function of the gauge. Right, that's going to do it for this one, guys. Just a quick one. So, hope you liked it. I'll see you in the next one.